Hi, and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr, and I have a question for all of you listening. Have you ever been given a label and shoved into a box that said, you fit right here? This one description is where you belong and where you need to stay. I know I have. And how does it make you feel? Because for me, it really puts a leash on my creativity, as well as it makes it really hard for me to want to break free and try new things. At some point, we may even find ourselves asking if it's worth it to just make the leap. And I'm here to tell you that if the desire to try something new is bubbling up inside of you, you owe it to yourself and to those who are waiting for the next great thing to step out of that box and just take the chance. My guest today is an author, an editor, a book coach, and a self-proclaimed sweet tea addict, and I could not be more pleased to welcome a fellow Southern girl to the show. So welcome, Allison.
Hi, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much.
I am so glad you're here. So, Allison, let's get to know you first. Just let us know what we need to know about you and all the good stuff.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a Southern girl. I'm from South Carolina. My family has been in South Carolina since 1640, so we've been here for a hot minute. I am a sweet tea addict. I have 4 children. I am an author. I used to be a journalist, and I got so tired of writing bad news that I decided to write my own book. So,
When did you start writing your own books?
I started writing okay. I wrote in a spiral notebook. I wrote a murder mystery when I was in the 7th grade. I still have that spiral notebook somewhere. It's probably on this bookshelf behind me somewhere. But I started writing for real my own books in about 2005. So that was when I started thinking that I could do something. When I was covering local politics, which were incredibly boring, I started learning about the towns that I was in and really started to love the history of them. So that's how I kind of got started.
Awesome. So you're still writing books. What is your genre? Where do you write right now?
So I write in 2 different veins, and they're similar but not. So right now I've been working a lot on sweet romance, just the cute meet cute, second chance romance or enemies to lovers type of a thing. But I write that sweet, so there's no on page explicitness or anything more than like kisses. But I also write in a gritty Christian fiction, which is something that I think I made up, maybe. I never heard of it before, and so I was like, I'm gonna call it gritty Christian fiction. And now I'm seeing it pop up in different places here and there. But so I write that. What gritty Christian fiction is Christian fiction that isn't like a Hallmark movie. It's dirty and it's real, and it deals with things that real people deal with, things like sexual assault, prostitution, war, death of a loved one, things like that. And they all have a story of redemption that comes in the end.
Mm. Well, we have that in common. I also write Christian fiction. I also am working on just romantic fiction books. And sometimes, those genres can overlap because you can get a good Christian romance in there as well. But, there are a lot of stereotypes and maybe even stigmas that come with writing Christian fiction in general. And I think a lot of that stems from, when you're trying to incorporate something as personal as faith into fiction, there's this tricky balance, right? It's a challenging market to exist in. So have you faced a lot of challenges, just writing in Christian fiction, whether it's gritty or not? Like, have you faced challenges in those expectations?
Absolutely. A lot of people, as soon as you say Christian fiction, they give you a look. Mm-hmm. You get that, like, oh, you're one of those people. And they think that you're going to beat them over the head with the Bible. They think that you're preaching to them. I will totally admit that with the first book that I wrote, it kind of was that way, because that's kind of how I thought you had to do it until I realized that I didn't have to do it that way. So it definitely evolved into more of I try to keep a redemption arc in all of them, but it's just part of the life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm now evolved to with my current work in progress, which it's just part of life, part of how it works. It's not a beat you over the head kind of a thing. But I definitely think that when you say Christian fiction to people, they immediately get a picture in their mind of something that their grandma's going to read, on Sunday afternoon. And that's not what it is.
Sure. And I've read some really great Christian fiction, even the sweet sappy ones, and I've read some less than great Christian fiction over the years, and I think the ones that they hit the middle and above range for me are the ones that they resonate with my own personal beliefs and values while they're also like still really well written. But the struggle I find when I'm writing it sometimes is balancing like realism and faith. And not that faith is fantasy, but I have to figure out how to balance this real world issue with my faith without being overly idealistic and entertain while challenging and elevating faith, and so there's just a lot of pressure just in that one genre.
Right. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And it is like a standard that you have to hold up to. But I think and even amongst the Christian community, a lot of times it's more of a pedestal. It's like, we tend to put like a pastor on a pedestal. And I think anyone, I'm having a revelation moment, anyone who like preaches in any way, and as a writer, even if you're writing fiction, you're still putting the word out there. You're still proclaiming your faith in some way and hoping people will grow in their own faith. You're still put on a pedestal of some kind, whether, you're not allowed to make mistakes and you're not allowed to get nitty gritty with a lot of things. And that's where I found a lot of issues in the publishing world after writing the books. So that's where a lot of my issues came from, because I didn't fit solidly, as you just said before in the intro, into a box. I didn't fit into a box. And people didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and it's hard because as a Christian, which that just means that I'm a human being who's saved by the grace of God, right? But I screw up daily. Sometimes it's hourly and even more frequent, just depends on the day. And so, but we are held accountable for the things that we put out there. But at the same time, like, we have to show that it doesn't matter how far you've gone, there's still grace and there's still redemption. But
Right.
people do see, they think the Amish love stories where, there's just this perfect, you barely mess up, somebody told a lie and all of a sudden, the world's falling apart, but then in the end, it all comes back happily ever after. And it's like, we have to find, I prefer, like, let me live through my character, the character that I'm reading about, because let me relate to that, because this is where I mess up. This is where I fall all the time. And so, yeah, I've seen, and I have seen publishers who are like, there's too much God in your story, but then it's like, oh, there's not enough, moral in your story. I don't know, like, we keep getting mixed messages in this world, and I don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that was one of the biggest things that I found. So it was my third novel that I wrote, is the one that I shopped the most. Because I'd written them without anything happening. They just kind of sat on my computer like a lump on a log. And so it was my third novel that I wrote that I really felt powerful about, and I felt was a really strong, amazing story. And so that was the one that I shopped. And I queried agents and publishers, and I got a lot of, I queried it to both secular and Christian agents, and I got a lot of, oh, if you would take God out of this, then we'll talk about it. I like it. I love your writing. I love the storyline, but take God out of it. Or on the flip side of that, it was, oh, if you would, like, the main character is a prostitute. If you would take that out, and I'm like, then there's no story. There's no story without that. They're like, no, it's too much. It's too much for us. And I sent that to over 100 different agents and publishers before I got that one picked up. And it took a long time, but it was worth the wait, though. It was totally worth the wait.
That's great. So you found somebody who would publish it, then you didn't go the self-publishing route?
Correct. Yeah. I met someone who's now a great friend of mine. I met someone doing an article on her because she was an author with a Christian publisher. And I actually published the first 2 books that I wrote. So not that one that I was having a hard time shopping, but the first 2 that I wrote, I ended up pitching to them, and they published both of those. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a doorway into a different publisher who is their motto is edgy clean. So they're Christian, but the company itself is not necessarily Christian. But they really like to make sure that they have clean stories, but have that grit and have that edge to them. And so they published my next 2 books, which were, again, one about a prostitute and a preacher who fall in love. So that one was the one that I kept trying to shop and had a really hard time. And then another one is The other was based off the woman at the well in the New Testament. And that one was, I hadn't shot that one to anyone before that. So, but that, you got someone who gets married 5 times and she goes through abuse and she goes through death of loved ones and it's hard. I don't like to write that the biggest thing that's happening is that the local ice cream parlor is shutting down. And while I feel for the family who owns the ice cream parlor, it's not life or death. Right. And I tend to, with my Christian fiction, I like to bring that quality to it that will make the readers, I like to make my readers cry, apparently. I get told that a lot, that I've made them cry. But it's got that hope in the end and that redemption story at the end that builds them back up and just fills them with that hope and that grace that we can all live with. So it's totally been worthwhile to do it.
Yeah, and that's always when I go into a book, regardless of the genre, I go into it with the mindset that I want to provide somebody hope in the end. Even if it's not Christian fiction, like I want them to see that there is always a chance for redemption. There's always a chance for hope because it's true. Like we know that with Christ, there's always that chance, that opportunity for redemption in the end. So if I go into it with that mindset, then I feel pretty good about it. But I am with you. I like to poke a little bit and be like, I think you should cry here. This is your cue. Let's see the tears.
I'm really good. Yeah, the saying, kill your darlings. I try not to do that, but in one of my books, I don't want to give away too much, but some very prominent characters have a very tragic ending. And I didn't know it was coming, and it totally blindsided me, and I'm bawling my eyes out. Every time I tried to edit that part, I was bawling my eyes out. If you were like, you wrote it, don't just change it if you don't like it. And I'm like, oh no, they live. It might be in my head, but they're not, and they tell me what is happening, and I have no control over it. So, but yeah, it's hard to do that. But I really think that people, you said a couple months ago, people want to identify with what they're reading. They want to feel that connection in some way, shape, or form. And so I think that, especially if you're going through a hard time in your life, whether it be maybe the death of a loved one or the loss of a job or something, whatever it might be, that you read characters who are also struggling and can have that moment of turnaround in their lives.
Yes. And so thinking about writing the edgy Christian, is there, sometimes we toe the line, we come right up to it. Is there a line that your characters absolutely will not cross, that you will not take action with your characters?
I have no idea. That's a great question.
You haven't gotten there yet.
Right. Well, so I have the one character who's a prostitute. She is she actively is a prostitute in the book, throughout the book. You don't ever see what happens, but you see her going into the room when the door closes, and then she comes back out of the room. You know what's going on. So I don't even shy away from that kind of thing. I just don't show it on.
Not on the page. Yeah.
I've written scenes with a rape, where again it's not explicitly spelled out, but it's very clear what's going on. I've got spousal abuse in there, but I don't know if there's anything that I would like. I want to keep bedroom scenes off of the page.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything that I wouldn't. I don't know if there's anything that I wouldn't tackle right off.
Well, and the reason I ask, I was on a podcast at the beginning of the year. I think it was either end of last year, beginning of this year. And we were talking about, should authors write diverse characters? And, I wasn't coming at it from, I am specifically a Christian fiction author, but like one of the big stigmas in literature right now is like a lack of diversity. And if I'm being 100% honest and transparent, like Christian fiction is not a place where you're going to find diversity. And I don't mean racially, because, there's, but sometimes I feel like there might be a little pressure to create diverse characters and to give them lifestyles that you wouldn't necessarily find in Christian fiction. And I just, it's not a cop out when I say that, I'm never going to try, but that's because I don't have context for those lifestyles anyway. So I wouldn't know how to write certain lifestyles on the page if I tried, and I wouldn't do them a good service. But, that was just one of the things. That's why I was wondering, because sometimes I feel like there's this pressure that we need to take God out and add more diversity. And then, but what are we left with in the end?
Right. I really think part of it is writing the characters that are true to you. What you feel lay on your heart. One of my works in progress that I'm working on right now is about a family of enslaved women, 3 generations of enslaved women. I am not from that heritage, but I have started that in 2019, and I'm still working on it so far. So 3.5 years so far of research and reading and talking with, historians, and wanting to make sure, because I really felt like God laid this story on my heart, that I want to make sure that I'm doing it justice and sending certain things to sensitivity readers and making sure that I am staying as authentic as I can without having that heritage in my family. So, but I also, talking about diversity in your characters, is I do try to write. Gosh, you're making me think a lot. There's so much through my head. Like I do try to write like racially diverse characters. I do try to do that. Like in my sweet romance genre books, I've got a main character who is Korean. I've got a main character who is African American, Latino. Oh, there's more in there, but so I try to represent both in the guys and the girls, different racial makeups, and also different socioeconomic makeup as well. Because I think also very common in Christian fiction is that especially if it's a romance, you've got the young lady and she's very demure and she's from a great family and she's well off, and they're not so the book is never about the scullery maid. It's always, especially if you're talking about historical, it's always about the affluent young lady. So I've definitely been trying to change that up as well, as to what socioeconomic status my characters are living in at that, for the time period. Because I write historical and contemporary. So
I think that a lot of times when it comes to writing diverse characters, especially in the Christian fiction realm, I think we have to just make sure that we're not compromising our convictions. And I think if we stay above board, if we don't feel the conviction of, hey, you probably need to leave that off the page, then by all means, go with it. I was just wondering because, I'll never write a gratuitously diverse character just for the sake of being popular. Like that's not going to happen in my book, because, that's not doing a service to anybody. That's, that would be unjust in so many ways. But, so anyway, yeah, that just kind of popped into my head. I was like, I'm going to throw that out there and see. The conversation that I had with the guy whose podcast I was on, I was like, so do you, because we were talking mostly racial, because he was a Black man and obviously I'm a white woman. And so we were having the conversation. He was like, well, kid, do you think that you should be writing Black characters? And I was like, I mean, I have Black friends that I could easily be like, hey, read this and tell me if it's insensitive or whatever. But I would never just pick somebody and be like, and now you're a Black character, like,
right.
just for the sake of saying, hey, here's your race is this because.
So. I've got the token Black person. So here we go. Yeah. No, I would never do that. I definitely feel like the characters tell me who they are and they tell me what they look like. God, it's just, they are what they are. Kind of like, I don't sit there and go, oh, we'd like to make this one, let's make her Latina because it makes it more popular or what, like, and no one wants it to be the side character anyway, because then that feels like a cop out. So
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And that's because, I don't want to be like, yes, I'm just trying to get an audience in whatever, that category, that demographic. I'm not trying to, that looks real bad. So.
Right. I agree with you.
So thinking about audiences and that kind of thing. So like like we've said, we have books that fit into multiple genres. My first two were Christian fiction. They're a series, back to back. And now my third one it's just a contemporary romance, clean contemporary romance, and it's in the beta reading phase. And so that's fun and exciting. And I even have like an urban fantasy on the back burner that I'm really itching to get into. So I have a lot of different genres that just constantly run through my head. And I've had a lot of readers, they're like, I'm so excited about the third book. And I clarify, I'm like, well, number 3 is not part of the first series, right? And they're like, oh, they deflate. But then they kind of rally and they're like, oh, I'm sure I'll love reading this one too. But there's this disappointment that I'm not just immediately writing their third book that they think they should get. And I have this fear that maybe I'm either trying to do something maybe I'm not qualified to do, or like I'm going to have to start from scratch and building a new audience, which just means more marketing and different tactics and all that kind of thing. Have you found, like, writing in different genres, like, have you found that you can usually reach the same audience, or do you have to grow a new audience?
So, well, I'm trying to do it all in the same audience because I just, I don't have time for 8,000 TikTok accounts or Instagram accounts or Facebook pages or whatever. It's too much. And I don't tell anyone in the writing world I said this, but sometimes I'm more than just a writer. And I know, don't tell. But I have 4 kids and a husband and pets and a chicken. And, like other things I need to do. I can't just sit on my computer all day long, making up social media and marketing for different pen names and things like that. If I wanted to really separate my genres, which is one of the reasons why I went with the sweet romance, because I felt like Christian fiction readers would easily, go over to the sweet romance genre for reading. Most, I would say I write with the Christian fiction, I'll say that that's women's Christian fiction. I don't think guys are going to read it. If they do, absolutely, how about it? But in general, they're written for women. So I think the sweet romance kind of goes hand in hand. They're different, but I think they've got enough in common that there's some overlap in there. And I actually asked in my newsletter a couple months ago, what were they currently reading? Because I thought, this is my research here. What is my audience from my newsletter reading? And see how, and they were reading everything from like Jody Headland to Colleen Hoover. So, and everything in between. So, it just because they enjoy either the sweet romance or the Christian fiction doesn't mean that they don't read outside of that genre.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's important to recognize. As long as you don't decide to start writing paranormal smut, it's a very clear divorce of genre. I think, sticking with the same name, the same audience, the same social media account, I think it hopefully creates one big happy family. So,
but I mean, like I'm one of those that I read just about anything once, like I'll give just about anything a try once, and maybe not paranormal smut, that doesn't really attract my attention, but it's just, that's a very specific audience I am not in. And but I'll read just about anything one time, and so you can go to my personal Goodreads and it's like, oh wow, like she's a rainbow of reading. It is what it is.
Right.
So but that's just me, and I know that some people are like, I will not read outside of Christian fiction, and it has to be Christian fiction. And, so I was wondering if you had faced any of that pushback or anything from anybody, because it's really funny. I was kind of surprised with my first 2 books. Like, I'll be 40 this year, and so I'm not in my mother's cohort, obviously, but like I'm not part of that age group. But that is the age group that has been drawn to my book more than anything, and I was like, it's so bizarre to me that I thought I was writing for me. And so, this next book is definitely geared toward, I would think, me and younger, but they're like, we're going to read it. And I'm like, oh, please. It's not bad. There's nothing on the page that makes you go, but it's like
different. You're right.
It's different.
I have found, one of the other questions I asked in my newsletter is, with my kids started back to school this week. Yes, August 1st they started back, because we'd like them to go back to school early here, because I don't know. I like it. It doesn't bother me, but I work from home, so not a big deal. Anyway, we're not talking about my kids' school. But I had put in my newsletter that they were going back to school, and if you had kids, what grades were they going into? And then someone was like, oh, my great-grandchildren are going into like kindergarten and second grade. And I was like, great grandchildren. Hey, that's so awesome. I'm so happy that you have great grandchildren, but also that the age demographic there, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I, I've been working on several, with the Sweet Romance, several multi-author projects. So it's writing novellas, and you've got like 14, 15 authors who are each writing a novella and putting it into this. They'll have a theme, like we've done Always a Bridesmaid, Last Man Standing, and then right now I'm working on some historical Western ones, which are weird because I generally only write Southern fiction. But still, I've got a Mail Order Bride and a Wagon Train. And so and the readers of those are a little bit older. I am 42, and they're a little bit older than I am, which is awesome. It's great. But it's definitely not the 20-year-olds are not reading Wagon Train Bride story. Which is fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see who your books attract, because you write it for yourself. You write it thinking that the people like you are going to enjoy it, whether that's your, your age, your socioeconomic background, your whatever, and it's not always that way. And it's cool to see what other people enjoy. I'm a big proponent of saying not every book is for every reader.
Yeah.
Just because I love this book doesn't mean you're going to love this book. I get people all the time who are like, this book was terrible. And I'm like, oh, well, I
liked it.
No. Yeah, I liked it. Or like, I do a book club, and our book club is often people going, oh, I loved it. And then I'm like, I didn't love it. But different stages in our life, different needing different things in what we're reading. The books that I can overly identify with that are about the like 40-year-old mom who's got teenagers and she's at her wit's end. I'm like, I don't want to read about that because that is my life. I'm living it. Like, give me the Mail Order Bride or the whatever, something totally off the wall. Because I want to escape and I want to get away, and I don't want to read about what I can experience in my living room.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. And that's so funny because in like the book talk world, like people get so upset when you say, well, I just didn't like that book, especially if it's one of the popular ones. And I'm like, what happened to literature and art being subjective? Like, when did we lose our ability to have an opinion on art? I don't know.
Not every book is for every reader. I love to say that and that all the time. And that's okay. That's why there's so many different genres and so many different how many times has Romeo and Juliet been rewritten in different ways, in different genres, in different settings, in different time periods? And it's, like, I might not like the Regency version of it, but I might like the fantasy version of it. I don't know. Everyone's got something different. And that's
exactly.
But if we all read the same books, how boring would life be?
I agree 100%. Absolutely. Like, it's funny you said Romeo and Juliet, but the one that I've seen over and over is Pride and Prejudice. Like, how many retellings of that one? I adore the original. The original, wonderful, perfect, beautiful. My sister, she is obsessed with it. Like, that is her all-time favorite, I think. And so she sent me one the other day. She goes, it's Pride and Prejudice in space. And I was like, oh. And so I was like, I'm trudging through it right now. I'm like, it's okay. It's fun. It's quirky. It's different. But I was just like, sometimes we're just that different. It's okay.
Yeah. Yep. Everyone enjoys something different, and that's perfectly fine.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go back to, I mentioned that you are a writer, an editor, and a book coach. So talk about that. Like, what's it like to do all three, and maybe talk about what a book coach is for listeners who may not know what they are.
Okay. So a book coach is just like a basketball coach or football coach, but it's for writing, for people who are writing. And I am certified as a fiction book coach. So if you've got nonfiction, don't come talk to me because I'm not good with the nonfiction stuff. But it's someone who is a part teacher, mentor, part cheerleader, who will help you take your book or just your idea. If you just have an idea and don't know how to start writing a book, I can help you with that. That's something I can help with. Or if you've gotten halfway through a book, I've had a couple of clients who've gotten halfway through a book and they're like, I don't know what to do now. That mushy middle that authors know about. Helping them kind of walk through that, figure out what's next. What are those next steps? Same with if you've completed a manuscript, I can help with those plot holes. Very much like developmental editing, very much is a part of that as well. Once you finish the novel, um, so helping with that, with the plot holes and getting it cleaned up. I can also help with writing the synopsis. You mentioned earlier writing the blurb was your least favorite part. So writing the synopsis, the blurb, a query letter if you're going to go with attempt to go with traditional publishing, or helping you get set up with what you need to do for indie publishing if you're going to do it on your own. So it really is a working relationship between an author and their coach, whether it's me or someone else, and helping them make the best book possible with what they want to do. And as all of the, LeBron James, I don't know sports, so I have to think about it. LeBron James or football person, I don't know. They have coaches, they've got coaches that are with them all the time. I have people who think that, oh, I just look at their stuff one time and tell them what to do and that's it. And that's not how it works. It's not a one-time deal. It's usually with clients, I ask for a 6-month commitment to start off with, because it's a relationship and it's helping you through a lot of things. So that's a book coach. How do I juggle all three? Not well. That's something that I'm still kind of trying to figure out, between writing my own stuff, editing for different people, and I also edit for a small press publisher, and then with the book coaching as well. At the moment, I'm looking for new clients, so that would be awesome if anyone of your listeners is interested. Yeah. But yeah, it's a lot of lists. My life is like I'm like looking around. I've got lists everywhere. I've got notebooks all over the place, and there's different notebooks for different things. One's for what I'm writing, one's for editing clients, one's for book coaching clients. I'm also a Girl Scout leader, so I got a notebook for that. So it's a lot of juggling and balancing, but thankfully my family my kids are a little bit older and self-sufficient. My husband works from home now as well. So that works really well that we can kind of balance things out. A lot of my calls end up being in the evenings when people are, a lot of people have their day job and then they do something, they try and look on their own books in the evenings. So a lot of my calls end up being after hours. So it's a lot of like, oh, I've got a call at 8. I'm going to need you to make sure the kids get to bed or whatever. So, it is a lot of juggling and a lot of lists. And my motto is, with scheduling, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. So, it's like a lot of calendar keeping, especially with 4 kids and my own stuff and whatnot. So it's definitely a juggling act, and sometimes balls get dropped, and that's okay.
That's right, Grace. That's what Grace is for.
Yeah,
absolutely. Is there one hat that you prefer wearing above the others of those 3?
Gosh, I really love editing, and I think I love writing my own stuff, but like I have got. Being a coach or an editor, either way, is like being a midwife who helps deliver babies. And it's being able to help a client take their book from good to great, or from not quite ready to polished and ready for shelves. It's a whole nother thing. Like, I'm proud of my own books, but man, my clients' books, it's just like, there's some immense joy that comes. Like, there's a section on my shelf, which now my hand is out of focus, right there. I think it might be one up right there, but that's all my clients' books. So I always buy my clients' books so that I have a copy of them, and I love that my shelf for that is growing. It started off like this, and it's getting bigger. But there's just nothing like helping an author achieve their dream. Yeah. And they say that 80% of people want to write a book. And helping someone do that is the most gratifying thing. And seeing, usually I'm talking to them on Zoom because none of them live nearby me, but seeing their faces light up when they have an aha moment or when their book hits the shelves. I had one coaching client who signed with an agent and then signed a 3-book deal with a publisher. And she was like emailing me going, oh my gosh. And I was crying. Like, I'm ugly crying for her. I was like, it's not my book. It's not my writing. But I helped. And that is the best feeling of all.
Well, because you know how much work goes into writing a book. Like, you know, on that end of things, how hard it is. And just because 80% want to, like, what is it, 1% actually get it done and published? And so to be part of that, just tiny thing saying, hey, I'm going to put you in that 1%, we're going to get there together. Like, yeah, that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, I have clients that self-publish, and that one is probably my client that's gone the furthest with traditional publishing with that 3-book deal. And I'm just like, I cannot wait for those to come out. I think her first one comes out this with her next month, I think. And so I'm just like,
I was
sorry.
that.
Yeah, and it really that's kind of what it is, and just like a parent, is proud of their kid, that or the teacher or the coach or whatever, like that really, I guess, validates what I do, and helping someone achieve their dreams is just one of the most amazing things.
That's huge. Well, we have run the full gamut here. Is there anything else you want to throw out there and talk about?
Well, a lot of achieving dreams and goals, any goal is achievable.
Yeah.
You just got to have the mindset, you've got to have the drive and the support. And I think that's a big part of it, is that writing especially is such a solitary career, or side hustle, either way it is for you. It's such a solitary thing, and it doesn't have to be. There are communities out there, whether they're on Book Talk, whether they're on a Facebook group, whether they're in a local chapter of like the ACFW. There's Women's Fiction Writers of America. That's it, WSWA. I'm like, wait, whether I'm in the South Carolina Writers Association, different things like that. There are groups that do local group meetups. You don't have to do it alone. So having that support system is hugely important, no matter what you want to do, whether you want to be an Olympic diver or an author, or you just want to, retire in wealth. I don't know, but it's achievable with the right path set before you, and with support. You can't do it without support. So that's not what I didn't have anything intended to say there, but that's what I'm saying. And I'm like, wow, yeah, support is huge.
It is huge. And
have a support system.
A good support system, because I tell you, there are plenty out there who they claim to want to support, but then they start feeding off of you more than supporting you. So you have to be so careful who you surround yourself with, because you don't want to have to constantly pour into other people. It needs to be a mutual support system, like not just, and that's hard, because it's like you said, it is a very lonely place to be if you're not careful. Like, you can get sucked into that isolation, but also to find people who understand what you're doing, because it is also a very unique place to be. Because I sent my husband a message the other day. I was like, I just need you to understand that I'm having some mental health concerns. I'm not sliding into depression. It's not anxiety. I don't know what it is, but like, I need your support. That's what I told him. I was like, I need you to be there for me, because I feel it. And he was like, whatever you need. And so to find people like that who you can send those messages to, that you can be vulnerable with, and be like, listen, we're about to move into a really busy season and I need you. And then they show up for you. So yes, you have to surround yourself with those kinds of people.
Absolutely. So important.
Well, tell everybody where they can find your work, your books, your services, all of those things. And that'll all be listed in the show notes, but let's hear it out loud.
So the easiest thing to do would be to go to my website, which is whatalisonwrote.com. You can get to everything from there, from links to my books to finding out more about me. You can get to my services as a coach or an editor. It's all on there at whatalisonwrote.com. You can also link to my socials. So anything, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, it's whatever, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, / what Allison wrote. So I tried to make it easy.
Yes, excellent. And her full-length rom-com, Two Princes, is on sale for $1.99 on Kindle. So head over there and read. I'm super excited. I was telling her before we got started, it showed up on my recommended list on Kindle. And so it's going on my TBR like stat. So I'm pretty excited about that. Well, Allison, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Like, I hope that we have encouraged somebody out there who maybe listening and just wondering if, can they do what they're being held back from? Like, can they actually take that step? I think we said a few things that somebody might relate to, and that hopefully will send them out there to step outside of that box. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know. Well, thank you for having me. This was so much fun, and I love connecting with other people who understand the voices in your head. That this was
and have conversations with them very regularly. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And authors, if you are looking for resources to help you write better stories and more relatable characters, visit my website, jcarwrites.com/authors. And to everyone who's listening, now is the time to go unlock your creative potential, embrace your authentic self, and look for opportunities to create new, genuine connections.